Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Thursday, March 6th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. When weather forecasters predict an upcoming El Niño weather pattern, that's historically meant it's likely to be a wet year. But are those forecasts accurate? New research out of UC San Diego says recently, not so much.
What I think that we need to do is try a different approach.
We'll learn more from the researcher who led that study. But first, these news headlines. A GOP proposal to shrink the federal deficit is taking aim at services like Medicaid. But hospital leaders in the Valley say that could have a negative impact on their operations. Cahuilla Health CEO Gary Herbst told the Visalia Times-Delta newspaper that 62% of patients in Tulare County are enrolled in Medi-Cal. That's California's version of Medicaid. The current GOP's proposal would shave up to $40 billion from the program. That would create a burden for local hospitals, who say they would be forced to pick up the tab. Thousands of county workers in Bakersfield went on strike on Wednesday. The demonstration's part of a 24-hour work stoppage organized by the SEIU Local 251. As KVPR's Joshua Yeager reports, the union says it's pushing back against poor working conditions at Kern County offices.
It was Alicia Aliman's first time on a picket line. She's a social worker, and she says she's fed up. Aliman says she wants Kern County leaders to address concerns with understaffing and retaining workers. Wednesday was their chance to make their voices heard.
It has been amazing to see them come out and see them advocate for themselves and sending a message to the Board of Supervisors that enough is enough.
Several county buildings closed to the public due to the lack of staff. Aliman says the county hasn't negotiated in good faith with union leaders, but she's hopeful that will change.
Today was a day where they finally heard us.
Workers will return to offices on Thursday as they await a response from the county. For KVPR News, I'm Joshua Yeager in Bakersfield.
This week, 2 eaglets broke out of their shells and into the world in a nest high up in a pine tree in the mountains east of Los Angeles. Tens of thousands of people from around the globe tuned into the 24/7 live stream to catch a glimpse. Madison Ament from our California newsroom partner KVCR has more.
The new parents, 2 eagles known as Jackie and Shadow, have become internet celebrities. Early in the morning, some 75,000 people watched as the chicks, only about 3 inches tall, hatched. Sandy Steers, who runs the camera, says from now on, Jackie and Shadow will be busy.
They will be protecting the eaglets and keeping them warm and covered and away from the elements, and they will be bringing food continuously.
Listen closely, and you can hear Jackie pick tiny pieces off a fish from nearby Big Bear Lake to feed the chicks. Steers says a 3rd egg could still hatch. She says to stay tuned because soon the chicks will learn to fly.
That was Madison Ament from our news partner KVCR. In other animal news, 2 lion cubs have made their public debut at the Fresno Chaffee Zoo. Asali and Taraj were born in November, but they hadn't been out in public view before this week. Zoo officials said Wednesday that the public can now view the cubs in the African Adventure exhibit. A video shared on social media shows the cubs darting around and exploring their new home as their mother, Zamaya, watches closely from behind.
Support for Central Valley Daily comes from the members of KVPR. Join at $8 or more per month and access ad-free NPR podcasts through NPR Plus. Give now at kvpr.org/donate.
And now to our main story. You might be familiar with the weather terms La Niña or El Niño. Those are seasonal weather forecasts that are made using data on atmospheric conditions and ocean temperatures. They help forecast how much rain will fall in a given year. And it's valuable information, especially in a state where water is such a precious resource. Predictions can help forecast potential flooding and wildfire burn scars, estimate groundwater recharge, and influence decisions on farms. Typically, El Niño years are wet years, while La Niña years are dry. But a new study from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography at UC San Diego suggests that these standards may be limited in their ability to accurately forecast rainfall. It turns out there is another factor that could be determining how much precipitation we see: atmospheric rivers. KVPR Associate Editor Carrie Klein spoke with the lead author of that study, Rosa Luna-Niño. Rosie is a postdoctoral scholar at Scripps. She's studying why weather patterns in recent years have deviated from historical norms. Carrie starts this conversation.
And so when forecasters predict that the next water year is going to be El Niño or La Niña, there's a lot of weight given to that prediction. But you are the lead author of a recently published study that explores why, despite some years predicted to be very wet or very dry, they can sometimes end up being the opposite, and they have ended up being the opposite. So tell me more about what inspired this research.
Well, I think the motivation was the unexpected precipitation anomalies that we get in winter 2022-2023. It was a La Niña year, weak La Niña, but the water year was one of the wettest years on record, at least for Southern California, Central California, I will say. And so we tried to understand what happened. We knew that atmospheric rivers were important for that year. 9 atmospheric rivers impacted California in a period of 3 weeks between late December and early January. And so we look at back in time, trying to find other years that did they behave as we expected based on El Niño or La Niña conditions. And we identify other years, other wet La Niña years, like for example, 2011, 2017, 2023, and that, I think in total we identify 4 wet La Niña years in a period of 70 years. And we also identify the other side of the coin, dry El Niño years. When we get the precipitation anomalies that we expect based on El Niño or La Niña events, we say, well, okay, we had the canonical pattern.
Right, canonical as in they matched up with predictions.
Yes, but during those years, wet La Niña, dry El Niño, the anomalies were completely opposite. So we call those years heretical La Niña and El Niño years because they were against the canon.
Right. Okay, so you found quite a few heretical years where El Niño years, we would have expected them to be wet, but they were quite dry, and La Niña years where we were expected them to be dry, but were quite wet. So what are some of the factors that could have caused this deviation from what was originally forecasted?
Yeah, that's an interesting result because all the heretical wet La Niña years were characterized by a very strong or active atmospheric river season, while the heretical dry El Niño years suffer by a weak or deficient atmospheric river season. And so we call the atmospheric rivers as the disruptors of the seasonal precipitation prediction based on El Niño or La Niña years.
Interesting. Atmospheric rivers as disruptors. What makes them so much more difficult to predict than kind of the overall El Niño, La Niña environment?
Well, El Niño or La Niña tell us about the conditions for 1, 2, or 3 months ahead. But the atmospheric rivers occur at a different scale. They occur in weather timescales. So that makes a challenge. And also there are other climatic patterns that influence atmospheric rivers.
And also, do you think that climate change could be contributing to this unpredictability in weather patterns?
That's a good question. As I mentioned before, 3 of these 4 events are very recent. And I think it's too soon to know if this is like a trend. But for future projections, for future changes, the projection shows that atmospheric rivers will be will increase their contribution to the precipitation in the West. If it's very challenging to predict atmospheric river precipitation, that means that the seasonal precipitation prediction will be even harder in the future.
Interesting. So do you think that this means that weather forecasters should stop using the El Nino and La Nina terms, or maybe put less emphasis on those climate or weather expectations?
What I think that we need to do is try a different approach, merge the seasonal signal from El Nino or La Nina plus the subseasonal signal as an indicator of atmospheric river activity. I think that will be ideal.
Okay, so you're not proposing that these terms go out the window, but that maybe they should be treated with a little more nuance, and to acknowledge that atmospheric rivers could totally change the situation.
That's true. Yeah, we're not doing that right now, but it's for sure part of our future plans.
That was KVPR Associate Editor Carrie Klein in conversation with Rosa Luna-Niño. Rosie is a postdoctoral scholar at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. And that's today's show. Don't forget, you can always reach out to us with your own story idea. Just email podcast@kvpr.org. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.